Hindu Dharma has been undergoing a renaissance in India since well into the 19th century. It was also the basis of the Indian independence movement. We see a strong impact of Hindu gurus and teachings, figures like Sri Aurobindo or Rabindranath Tagore or Mahatma Gandhi. They were not just awakening India as a country in general, they were appealing to the dharmic traditions, the yoga, the Hindu heritage, the Bhagavad Gita, and the spread of yoga globally was also rooted in that greater Hindu awakening. Even Swami Vivekananda referred to himself in his travels as a Hindu monk, not just simply a yoga teacher promoting yoga in the world. And today in India, there is also a greater Hindu awakening going on, because as India has developed economically and educationally, there is a recognition of the values of the Indic civilization and of India's Hindu heritage. Even when we come to the Western world, we've had the Hindu diaspora to the countries of North America, particularly the English-speaking countries. And here we find something very interesting. The Hindus now are among, or if not the most educated and affluent echelon of society, sometimes along with the Jewish population, but also more so than the other religious groups. So the myth of the poor, backward, uneducated, you might say regressive Hindu is gone. And the Hindus in the Western society are in the most progressive media, medicine, science, and we have beautiful Hindu temples throughout the world, from Europe to the United States to Australia to so many different countries. So Hindu Dharma is developing a more positive image and an image of its deep spirituality, yoga, and the competence of Hindu people and their social values. They're not causing any crime problems anywhere. They're not causing social disharmony anywhere. They're not asking for special attention. They are showing that they can contribute to the society and they can be of value to all members and all aspects of the society. And in India itself, we see the contribution of the Hindu gurus in terms not only of the religion and spirituality, but ecology, the villages, economy, new ways of life, planetary vision, healing, and so forth. So the positive value of the Hindu tradition is there. And now there's also a recognition by Hindus that they also need a specific social or political voice. This is sometimes a matter of controversy, and sometimes there are derogatory terms like Hindu chauvinism or Hindu nationalism, or the idea that some Hindu politics is communal or Hindu activism is wrong. So let's put this in perspective. The fact is that if we look at the world today, and even throughout the preceding century or more, Hindus have been the least active socially and politically of any religious group in the world, and they still are to a great extent today. Throughout the world, we find that the Hindu communities have a low percentage of voting, particularly compared to other communities. Even in places like the West, where they are a minority, they don't have the kind of vote blanc that other groups say Muslims do. They also tend not to vote any religious causes, but to vote relative to the general society overall. So essentially speaking, Hindus have avoided politics, and many Hindus think that it's wrong for them as Hindus to be political. Now, in India as a country, the minority religions are very active and vocal politically and voting massively and in bloc. This includes Muslims and Christians as well. And this is also true in terms of other communities. In fact, the Islamic community votes in bloc wherever country it is located in and has a major political impact because of that. So the fact is, in the democratic world, the vote is your power. If you don't vote, you don't exercise your power. And also, if you don't vote strategically, for example, even in a country like India, India is the only country in the world where the religious places, the temples of the majority religion, are controlled by the state governments, and the revenues are taken away and used for the purposes the state government wishes to do, not the purpose the devotees gave the money or the resources to. So the fact is, Hindus have not been socially or politically aware, and they have paid for that. We're even seeing this now in South India and Sabrimala, where Hindu temples are interfered with by the courts, while churches and mosques are not interfered with by the courts. They are allowed to have their own laws and function in their own manner. So it's very important, particularly in this age of democracy, that Hindus are socially and politically aware, and they are also aware of Hindu causes. I'm not saying that Hindus have to vote religion in terms of all that they do, but it's very important that Hindus have their proper role educationally. For example, in the United States, the textbooks were portraying Hindu Dharma in a negative way, whereas they were portraying the other religions in a positive way. Why? Because the Hindus did not object and did not suggest changes. So over the past 10, 15 years, the Hindus started objecting and asking for changes. So now they're willing to change the textbooks bit by bit to have a more positive view of the Hindu Dharma. So it's not that here the Hindus were being discriminated against, but they weren't taking their social responsibility. Even in the India context, a lot of the textbooks have a lot of negative things about Hindu Dharma that are not appropriate and should be changed, but the Hindus have not organized well enough to address these issues. Now, what we've had in India recently, particularly since Narendra Modi, is that there has been a Hindu vote. Now, it's curious, since there is a Hindu vote, now in 2019, we find political parties and politicians that basically took an anti-Hindu stance, now suddenly visiting temples, connecting with the gurus, talking about following Hindu deities. We see that they are also, if the vote is going along Hindu lines, the politicians will also start thinking along those lines, or at least trying to address those particular issues, at least enough to pick up the vote. So Hindus should not be naive. In the media age also, there's a lot of negative stereotypes about Hindu Dharma in the media, even though Hindus are peaceful. They have no terrorists, they don't invade any country, they're not involved in crime, they're not involved in disruption of the society. But because they have not taken that role of challenging the media, the academia, even colonial stereotypes about Hindu Dharma can still be found in Western publications like the New York Times. Whereas the colonial stereotypes about Africa or Native America, which were very similar, have since been removed because these were challenged and addressed. So Hindus need a social and political activism, a social activism to reform Hindu society, but also to bring a Hindu point of view in society and uphold dharmic values. A Hindu political view in the sense of Hindus should vote and should address also the issues educationally and in terms of Hindu temples, etc., relative to Hindu needs. And we must also remember there's not another major Hindu country like India to support the Hindu causes. And if they are not addressed in the Indian context, then of course it's going to be very slow for them to be addressed outside the India context. So what has happened is the various political groups that have benefited from the lack of the Hindu vote are still trying to suppress the Hindu vote by telling Hindus shouldn't be political, politics isn't part of Hinduism, Hinduism is spiritual only. If we look at the Hindu text, Ramayana is also about a war and about dharma. Mahabharata is about a war and about dharma. Hindu texts like Mahabharata also have the Raja Dharma Parva, the way of kings, the organization of society. We have a whole set of Dharma Shastras that are also about organization of societies, laws, values, duties, and so forth. That dimension has always been addressed. And the Hindu view is not to use social influence to impose a belief, as we've had with the religions in the Western world. It's to use the social influence to promote dharma and to promote the freedom of spiritual practice in society. Even today, there's a greater religious diversity inside of India than in any other country. And even in India today, there are more Muslim sects freely acting than there are in countries like Pakistan or Saudi Arabia, because the Hindu ethos is not imposing some Hindu belief system on everyone, but encouraging spiritual growth and sadhana. And Hindus need to embrace other social causes. Ecology is a major social cause that Hindus need to address. There's much ecological improvement that can go on in India itself, but also the role of ecology in the world. The Hindu view on that is very important. Hindu views on the role of women, the goddess, gender, these are also important to bring into consideration. Hindu views on healing, medicine, consciousness, well-being. It is very important that we have the Hindu point of view in media and academia, even by way of representation. Hindu Dharma, third largest religion in the world, over 1 billion people. That means 1 in 6 or 7 people is a Hindu. Why shouldn't they have a voice in the world of democracy? Why should the other groups have a monopoly on morality, on ethics, on politics, on all these different social and educational issues that come up? So Hindu activism is important. It's the essence of karma yoga. The Indian independence movement was also rooted in a kind of Hindu activism. Mahatma Gandhi took on and had the role of the Hindu sadhu. He gained the adulation of the masses, not simply for his own personality, but because he took that image of the sadhu, the truthful sadhu, the ascetic, the yogi, and brought that to the masses and put that behind the views that he had, so that the history is there. And even if we look at India since independence, the sad thing is there's been a moving away from the Hindu Dharma in favor of the left, the Marxist, and the communist. Now, fortunately, unlike China, the communists never took power in India and couldn't have their cultural revolution. But unfortunately, the communists had a lot of intellectual power, and the Marxists still have a fair amount of power in academia and media in India today. And since Hindu Dharma is their main enemy because it's the majority religion, they tend to denigrate the practices of Hindu Dharma, downplay the role of Hindu history, or even say there's no such thing as Hinduism. There's just a collection of religions in India. There's no such thing in India. There's just a geographical region that various people have created various kingdoms. So in that respect, the Hindu view of history, the Hindu view of society, the understanding, Hindu understanding, we discussed the sacred geography of India. These also need to become out. Hindu voice needs to be heard. Why should a Hindu voice become excluded? Even in the India context, Hindus are the majority, And democracy means the rule of the majority. That doesn't mean Hindus should be oppressive, but it means that the Hindu point of view should be there. India is the only country where the majority religion is given a secondary or a backward status. And even sometimes people say, oh, but minorities are not treated well in India. But let's look at this clearly. The Islamic community in India has grown in numbers, percentage, and there have been Muslims in every major occupation up to the president of India. They only haven't been a prime minister. If we look at Pakistan, the Hindu minority has been continually reduced. It's had very little or no power or money. It's been subject to intimidation bordering on genocide. So if there is democracy in South Asia, and if there's democracy in India, it's because of its Hindu heritage. Because the countries that don't have that Hindu heritage do not have the democracy, and they don't have the respect for minorities. If we look at Christianity in India, we see that Christians have more freedom, more places of worship, more respect than they do in Pakistan, Bangladesh, even China. In fact, one of the reasons why Hindus are so much subject to conversion is India is the largest country in the world that allows the missionaries to come in. Chinese do not allow them to come in. Islamic countries do not allow them to come in. Hindus have this history of tolerance and openness, which is good, but it shouldn't go to the point of self-denial or loss of your own rights or loss of your own culture. So a Hindu awakening is occurring. Hindu awakening is essential to preserve the Hindu heritage. It is not threatening anyone. It is something that's occurring in the context of India. And it's something that's fostering many different points of view, many different spiritual gurus and masters. At the same time, Hindus must recognize that if Hindu Dharma is not respected and doesn't flourish in India, there's no other place where it is going to continue except in the background or as a sidelight. So as we see this Hindu awakening today, we should not try to look at it as a negative thing at all. It's like the awakening of the Black community or the awakening of the colonial countries under colonial power to throw off the colonial influence, even the throwing off of communism in Eastern Europe. Hindus also have their human rights that must be addressed, and Hindus have their ability and their role in leading and guiding the society. The problem is a lot of the politics in India has been based upon this type of dividing of the Hindu vote or discrediting of Hindu identity. Because if there's a strong Hindu voice, it's going to win. If you want to divide the country and control it from other standpoint, then you have to create divisions within that greater Hindu society. And this is the challenge that India has today. Now, of course, there's always the danger that too much pride of a religion can cause a particular problem. But so far, that has not been the issue at all. And we must also remember that Hindu Dharma is not like Christianity or Islam. It cannot create a militant tradition of one God, one book, one savior, conversion, conquering the world, saving the world for the one God, because it doesn't have the theology that goes along with it. Its theology, its philosophy is one of yoga, acceptance, self-realization, diversity, human unity, and respect. So it's very important that we understand the importance of Hindu Dharma globally, the importance of Hindu Dharma in India, and the need to preserve Hindu heritage, preserve Hindu identity, even honor Hindu pride, honor the great culture and civilization, religion, and spirituality. And there's no need to be apologetic about that. Naturally, those groups who have benefited by Hindus being weak or India being weak will not want to see a consolidation of strength, because it will then challenge their particular power. And also, Hindus have to have an active voice and counter negative stereotypes against the Hindu Dharma, media distortions, educational distortions. All of this needs to be done because we live in the era of the media, we live in an era of information, and you cannot expect another group to defend your religion or your culture. If you don't do it yourself, the other groups will certainly not do it, and they will take it as a sign of weakness. And we see now as the Hindu voice comes up that it gains greater respect, it gains acknowledgement. Democracy voting is one way that it gains strength. Swami Dayananda always said that the Hindu vote is sacred and each Hindu should vote and should vote the cause of Dharma and should also support the best dharmic causes, the best dharmic influences at any point of time. So it's not really simply a religious vote, it's a politics, it's an activism of upholding dharmic traditions and dharmic values, even supporting other dharmic traditions like the Buddhist tradition. Many of the same problems the Hindu Dharma has had, Buddha Dharma is also having, being under siege in different countries, in Tibet, losing its bases, being subordinated by the communists in so many countries. A lot of the negative criticisms against Hindu Dharma from the radical left are the same criticisms given against the Dalai Lama and the Buddhist coming together of dharmic causes. Hindus also have a role in defending native traditions throughout the world because they also are following similar traditions of respecting the divine and nature and living close to the earth. And as we look into this coming century, a greater Hindu participation is required, one that is articulate and self-confident, as well as considerate, polite, but also discerning, aware, and not just simply willing to compromise for the sake of short-term social harmony, but holding to the truth and creating a better dharmic society for the benefit of all.